and to the chair, Ruth Thompson, to Dr. Martin and Dr. Scott and the entire academic fraternity and those who have joined in to this amazing and very important conference. Welcome. My conversation this morning, and I call it a conversation, is going to be one in which we'll look at the intersection of environment and sports, but more importantly, pinpoint the aspects that are quite very, very critical for us to leverage the opportunities that do exist. But I'll put this within the context, leveraging an African proverb which goes thus, that you must treat the earth well. It was not given to you by your parents. It is loaned to you by your children. The insightful African proverb represents a wake-up call to humanity on how we all need to treat the planet. It is like a loan asset that we will relinquish someday. And it is a call to embrace sustainable consumption and production patterns as a critical foundation to preserve this asset. The urgency of this call cannot be overestimated. Just imagine this. Because of unsustainable consumption and production patterns that are ingrained in nearly all conventional socio-economic activities, humanity, as we speak today, is using nature 1.7 times faster than its biocapacity to regenerate. In simple terms, we as humanity are using resources equivalent to 1.7 Earth, yet we have only one Earth. The implication is that we have dangerously overdrawn nature's account, a reality that manifests through three of the leading crises of our time called the triple planetary crisis: nature and biodiversity loss, climate change, and pollution and waste. For example, when it comes to biodiversity, the current rate of species extinction is at historic levels. Wildlife populations have declined, as we're speaking today, by an average of 69% in the past 50 years. When it comes to pollution, every day the equivalent of 2,000 garbage trucks full of plastics are dumped into our oceans, are dumped into our rivers, and into our lakes. And this is literally one garbage truck full of plastics being dumped into our oceans every passing minute. In addition, an estimated 50% of the world's untreated wastewater still enters our rivers, still enters our lakes and seas. And over 90% of the group breathe air that exceeds the World Health Organization air quality limits. And as a result, as we're speaking today, every year, 7 million citizens across the entire world lost their lives prematurely. And this is 3 times as many deaths as road traffic accidents worldwide. Up to 1.7 billion people use severely contaminated water. But when it comes to climate change, the 2023 United Nations Environment Programme Global Emissions Gap Report is clear that global emissions trends continue towards unsafe warming levels of between 2.5 to 2.9 degrees. Distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, from traveling to the making of arenas, equipment and jerseys and the sporting industry is a significant contributor to compounding this risk of the changing climate, of biodiversity loss, and of pollution and waste. Its abundant use of resources coupled with high carbon emissions makes it a notable risk contributor to the triple planetary crisis. For example, the global sports sector is estimated to generate about 60 billion tons of carbon dioxide equivalent per year. This is equivalent to about 13 billion cars worth of emissions. Up to 85% of these emissions are because of travel, are because of accommodation. In addition, on average, air pollution around stadiums during sporting events can be over 20 times higher than normal for up to 12 hours after a game ends. The amount of waste that is generated in a single sporting event can be staggering. For instance, just one national football league game can produce between 30 to 40 tons of solid waste in a single event. Major sporting events can generate up to 750,000 plastic bottles in just one event. Sport equipment can also be a significant source of waste. For example, tennis balls pose a unique environmental challenge as they are extremely difficult to recycle. With no established solution for recycling, some 330 million tennis balls as we speak today, manufactured globally each year ends up discarded, mostly in landfills. They take more than 400 years to decompose, and their polluting effects last through many generations. And when you go down to the sub-national level, local sporting facilities and leisure centers contribute as much as 40% of a council's carbon footprint. For instance, one local tennis and fitness center produced up to 121 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent to powering over 100 homes at the individual level. From travel to food, to water, to infrastructure and waste, the average person attending a sporting event can generate a carbon footprint that is up to 7 times greater than someone going about a normal day. On the ecological footprint, sports, as we're speaking today, are a major contributor to land degradation through the use of physical space and the maintenance of that space. For example, a golf course can take up land that could otherwise be used for multiple other inclusive development uses, whether we're talking about housing, parks, green spaces, and farming, among others. In addition, in some instances, there is the risk of overuse of pesticides and herbicides to maintain perfect grass conditions. It is estimated that 18 kilograms of pesticides are used per hectare per year in maintaining grass in a golf course. In comparison to agricultural uses, only about 2.5 kilograms per acre per year is utilized. These chemicals, as we're speaking today, do leach out and pollute the open environment. They leach out into our riverways, into our water bodies, into our lakes, contaminating our aquatic life, our fish, and killing our aquatic biodiversity. And this not only causes harm to the environment, but it also jeopardizes lives, resulting to what we call antimicrobial resistance that is costing hundreds of thousands of lives across the entire world, and more so in the global south, in the African continent. The amount of water needed to maintain fields of outdoors sporting venues can be equivalent to 2 to 5 centimeters of water once or twice per week, translating to over 300,000 liters of water weekly and over 20,000 liters daily. Water that is enough to fill a swimming pool. For example, to maintain 30,000 football fields, it's estimated that clubs consume over 100,000 million cubic meters of water. And these are equivalent to the annual consumption of 2 million people. Environmental resources are also used in the manufacture of sporting kits. For example, as we're speaking today, over 2,000 liters of water are needed to fabricate one cotton t-shirt, which is the equivalent of having 8 cups of water per day for 3.5 years. This tells us one thing. It tells us that these environmental risks further affect the performance of sports. For example, because of climate change, an estimated 50% of Winter Olympics host cities won't be able to sponsor the games by 2050 as we speak today due to a lack of snow and ice. Already over 90% of all ski resorts worldwide are using artificial snow, which requires not only significant capital investment, but also large amounts of water and energy. And furthermore, in a world at over 2 degrees, sports practitioners could forfeit up to 24 days of practice and up to 66 days in an over 4-degree warming world. Children who engage in sports under polluted air may lose up to 14% of their lung capacity by the time they're adults, which jeopardizes their future abilities as athletes. Athletes' performance may be reduced by up to 16% because of air pollution. Cumulatively, poor air quality has a negative effect on both performance and strategic decision-making among athletes. A surge in the concentration of particulate in the air can actually increase the risk of making wrong decisions by over 26%. In track events, it has been shown that increased exposure to both particulate matter and ozone can result in 5,000 meters race times that are up to 12 seconds slower, which can be the difference between the first and the sixth place. The impact of these findings is multiplied when we consider that over 50% of the world's urban population, where most sports take place, live in cities that exceed the World Health Organization air quality standards by over 6 times the recommended levels. Only about 17% of the total urban population live in cities and towns with recommended air quality standards. In addressing this environmental risk, some stakeholders in sporting industries across the world have continued to increasingly take innovative steps to address the ecological and carbon footprint of sports, covering key areas like food and beverages, to travel and accommodation, as well as infrastructure. For example, the Emirates Stadium in England recycles about 75% of the waste from game day, while Germany's Allianz Arena has increased its energy efficiency by 60%, saving up to 362 tons of carbon dioxide per year. The Golden One Center in California creates over 3,000 gallons of biodiesel per year by recycling the cooking oils used in their concession stands. Amsterdam Arena, host of one of the 2019 Champions League soccer's semi-finals, is powered by more than 4,200 solar panels, which generates around 930,000 kilowatts of electricity each year. That's 10% of the stadium's previous annual electricity consumption. In addition, the stadium was able to adopt secular initiatives to replace its 53,000 old plastic seats. The older chairs were either sold as souvenirs, recycled and replaced with seats made from 100% recycled plastic, 10% of which was recovered from the ocean. The London 2012 Olympics is another great success story. The Games achieved a zero waste to landfill target. By doing so, the organizers managed to save an equivalent of 400,000 tons of carbon dioxide. The Olympic Park, which was built on once contaminated industrial land, was later converted into the biggest urban parkland in Europe over the previous 150 years. The following summer, Olympics in Rio de Janeiro also had some significant positive accomplishment. A total of 9 kilometers of rivers were recovered through restoration practices, while new waste and wastewater treatment stations were established. In the USA, at the 2018 Super Bowl, 91% of all waste was either recycled, reused, or composted. At the 2015 Super Bowl, 73% of unused food was diverted from landfills through recycling and composting efforts. To the Tokyo 2020 Summer Olympics, we took sustainability in sport to a higher notch. For example, 99% of non-consumable items acquired for the tournament, including timberwood, computers, tablet, electrical appliances, as well as office desks and chairs, were reused and recycled afterwards. Even the beds in the Olympic Village were built from recyclable cardboard, and the athletes' 5,000 medals were made from precious material extracted from all electronic devices donated by the public. In terms of carbon footprint, the Tokyo Games not only used most of its energy from renewable sources, but it also went beyond neutrality by offsetting all the direct and indirect emissions produced throughout the event. This was mainly accomplished through emissions trading programs, which ended up creating an offset of 4.38 million tons of carbon dioxide in comparison to the total of 1.96 million tons of generated carbon. Distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, these are just few examples of concrete steps been taken to enhance sustainability in the sporting sector, considering that the global sporting industry is valued over $2 trillion today, with annual revenues of between 400 billion to 1.4 trillion and a projected annual growth of 6.5%. The urgency to tap to these investments to achieve sustainability in our sports is very, very crucial. Yes, it is crucial because of what can actually be achieved when these steps are taken. And for this, the following are key areas that I think academic institutions, like your own institution, could prioritize to enhance the uptake of sustainability in sports. And the first aspect that is very, very important is to make a business case for sustainability. Yes, it is important to make a business case for sustainability from input to processing and to outputs. Inculcating sustainable consumption and production patterns is critical to enhancing savings and improving the financial bottom line of sports enterprises. We were to take a very practical example. It has been proven that by lessening the environmental impact in key areas of waste, in key areas of energy, transport, and supply chains, a football club can save 42% in energy costs on one side through installing more efficient lighting. In addition, sourcing up to 90% of building materials from within a 4-mile radius, where up to 80% are made from recycled materials, lowers the cost by up to 25%. In addition, on average across the entire world, sponsorship revenue for sustainability practices is growing at about 64%, while recycling regulations are also growing at 44%. This means that by investing in sustainability, be it in waste, be it in energy, be it in transport or supply chains, as already discussed earlier, sports ventures will position themselves to enhance their bottom line by lowering costs, increasing revenue through sponsorship, and aligning with policy regulations that are increasingly prioritizing sustainability. And that takes me to the second point, which is to make a health case for sustainability. The sporting industry, as it is today, is a major driver of sustainability risk, which in turn harms the performance of sports and the broader community, from pollution to increased carbon emissions that exacerbate climate change to unsustainable use of environmental resources. Conventional sports are a major source of environmental risk. For example, breathing polluted air during games reduces the performance of athletes by up to 16%, which can mean the difference between the first and the last position. Children who engage in sports and breathe polluted air may reduce their lung capacity by up to 14%, which harms their future sporting potential. The amount of pesticides used to maintain sporting venues can be up to 7 times higher than the amounts used in agriculture. This means that effluent from sporting facilities can be 7 times more contaminating to key environmental resources like water, like the food we eat, than farm effluent, and thus pose a greater risk to human health, including the health of athletes who may consume such contaminated sources. The implication is therefore that prioritizing sustainable solutions, like the use of biopesticides, the use of biofertilizers instead of agrochemicals, as well as prioritizing clean energy solutions, has never been needed as it is today. To prioritizing e-vehicles and solar and wind to power the logistical and power needs of sporting events will go a long way to protect the health of athletes, to protect the health of sports fans that are core stakeholders in sport. And that takes me to the third point, which is leveraging sports as a platform and a sounding board for mobilizing collective actions towards environmental sustainability. At no time has this been more important because stakeholders in the sporting industry need to prioritize collaborations with lead agencies engaged in the environment, such as the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and the United Nations Environment Program, to enhance awareness and popularity of sustainable sports, including among investors. For example, a collaboration between the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and sports organizations And their communities has created what is called Sports for Climate Action. A Sports for Climate Action initiative to position the sporting sector on the part of the low carbon economy that global leaders agreed on in a Paris Agreement that was adopted in December 2015. And today, over 200 sporting entities from across the entire world are part of this initiative. In addition to this, the United Nations Environment Programme, through the Clean Seas campaign, which is the biggest, most powerful global coalition devoted ending marine plastic pollution, engaged the sporting bodies and athletes across different backgrounds, from Olympics to sailing to cricket to football to rugby to athletics to baseball, etc., to galvanize broad-based action towards addressing marine plastic pollution. Such collaborations are critical to authenticating the efforts of sporting stakeholders in sustainability and thereby enhance their potential to leverage the market and branding advantages of sustainable sports. Beyond such high-level interventions, at the informal sector level, mostly in the global south and the African continent, sports, being a critical part of the social fabric, can be critical to inculcating environmental sustainability practices that are key to addressing challenges such as indoor pollution. As an example, up to 20% of TV audiences of international footballing league matches are in Africa and cut across all walks of life. This is a timely platform that can be leveraged to run advertisements on the health, on the social and environmental and economic benefits of clean cooking solutions, for example. Because in the continent, as we're speaking today, air pollution, both indoor and outdoor pollution, see over 700,000 people lost their lives for committing no crime just because they do not have an alternative to clean cooking. But simple conversion of waste to biogas to replace charcoal, from waste to briquettes, to replace charcoal can save over 700,000 lives of people in the entire continent, because 700,000 people die every year from indoor pollution. And so leveraging the sporting platform to prefer these clean cooking solutions, popularize them and enhance uptake, will be able to transform countries and transform lives and give opportunities, especially for the young people, where over 60% of the entire continent population is below the age of 30. And that takes me to the fourth point, which is to expand research on the interaction of sports and the environment, a crucial aspect, because let's face it, holistic research on sports operation in relation to nature is not very prominent. However, the United Nations Environment Programme commissioned a Sport for Nature report to assess the environmental impact of sports and to set a baseline for nature-conscious work in the sporting sector. The study revealed two key findings. The first was that the sporting sector understands its reliance on nature. Sporting sector understands the importance of nature, and that without nature, the sporting sector will not be able to get to the optimal level. The second finding was that unfortunately, many sporting organizations don't know how to protect nature. This is a clear indication of the knowledge gap in addressing the sport sustainability gap. It therefore behoves each and every one of us, and especially the academic fraternity, to use these findings and leverage these findings from the United Nations Environment Programme and other supporting organizations and build on what they unveiled called Sports for Nature Framework during the United Nations Biodiversity Conference in December 2022, where the Global Biodiversity Framework was adopted. Framework aims to establish an international action campaign for coordinating the sports sector response to climate change, to respond to biodiversity loss and other environmental issues. The success of such a framework and other initiatives focused on sustainability in sports is in the generation of knowledge on this subject area to enhance applications. To this end, academic institutions need to offer scholarships in these areas to enhance research and bridge knowledge gaps. And this takes me to the last point, which is to leverage the sporting fraternity as a critical stakeholder in environmental monitoring. As discussed Sports are impacted by climate change. They're impacted by pollution and waste. They're impacted by nature and biodiversity loss. At the same time, it is also a driver of this environmental risk. But to address this risk, there is a need to tap the platform of sports to promote the uptake of solutions to this environmental crisis that we're facing today. Ensure objectivity, data and analysis on the impact of solutions, as well as investment enablers for solutions uptake, need to be part and parcel of early warning systems. Sports provides a conduit for this to happen in 2 dimensions. And the first way I see this is sustainability in sport is a solution that enhances energy savings, addresses pollution, and creates sustainable enterprise opportunities. And these are solutions to addressing pollution, to addressing climate change, and nature loss, all of which impact sports. The second is that the platform of sports can be leveraged, popularize solutions to climate change, to biodiversity loss, to pollution and waste causes that arise from other areas apart from sports, but which end up impacting sports. As shared earlier, for instance, sports can be a platform to popularize clean cooking solutions, to address indoor pollution and deforestation risk caused by using unclean cooking. Sports can be a platform to popularize e-transports, electric vehicles to address fossil fuel-driven air pollution that impacts sports. This holistic monitoring that matches upstream risk, causes to the mainstream state of environmental quality and downstream solutions and investment enablers needed for solutions uptake is what the United Nations Environment Programme is driving, called early warning for the environment. Early warning for the environment systems need therefore to leverage sports as a source of information on solutions to environmental risk, to ensure that at least we can enrich decision-making towards forestalling and minimizing risk. And this is very, very important because in the world in which we are today, with temperatures already above 1.1 degrees, and with pollution, and with biodiversity loss at unprecedented rate, but yet at the same time, with unemployment rates across the entire world, and especially in the global south, rising, leveraging the platform of sports to propose solutions, and at the same time can create not just the environment in which enabling policies are put in place to bring impact to scale, but can incentivize the private sector to generate solutions that can be able to put clean solutions in place, and even in spaces in which we do not have the opportunities at the moment. Sports therefore become not just the platform to leverage data, but also a platform to prefer and market solutions to communities and even across the entire world. Distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, as I've already discussed, sports provide a potentially transformative platform through which investments towards environmental sustainability can be escalated, while at the same time safeguarding the health of athletes and the environment. While we all know that the reliance of sport on nature and a healthy environment, the sector has continued to have a significant carbon and ecological footprint that places it at a crossroad with nature. The heart of protecting, the heart of restoring and conserving the planet, which is a fundamental asset for successful sports, is where the gap has been. Through this lecture, so potentially transformative paradigm shifts that I've mentioned, I believe, if they're embraced by academic institutions and other stakeholders towards actualizing this, how can actually move the needle forward. It is my sincere conviction that if we work together, we will realize the promise of sustainability in sports, because in the words of an insightful African proverb, wisdom is like a baobab tree, and no one individual can embrace it. Thank you very much.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, please join me. Put your hands together or using the signal to express our appreciation of Dr. Richard Munang. Thank you for a wonderful presentation. Thanks again. We have some time for questions if you have a few minutes. Dr. Rose Chapeda Thompson have scheduled out some time for the audience to ask questions and if possible for you to respond to the questions. So let me see the chat room. Folks, please feel free to drop your questions in the chat room. I can help read it out to Dr. Munang. The chat room is open. Please feel free to drop your questions. Dr. Munang. Just a second.
Yes, James.
Yeah, look at the stadium behind me. It's a financial engine for the University of Georgia's athletic department. The stadium is about a capacity of 94,000. Right now, we have 7 home games. Each game is about equivalent to $20 million income, and that will likely change to 8 games in the coming 2 seasons. So out of the $200 million athletic income, we're talking about 80% are generated from that stadium behind me or its affiliations. Very exciting place. But as you indicated, very crowded, a lot of bottles, a lot of trash are produced. Tailgating outside the stadium oftentimes have almost the same capacity, another 100,000, 50 to 100,000 outside the stadium, not going into the game, but staying outside. So also put a burden on the environment. This is a football, basketball game days weekend. Today's March Madness, similar situations. What are some common best practices to deal with the trash, the noise, the excessive burden on the water sewer system?
Yep, thank you very much. I mean, very important question. I think I did touch on this, which is that a football club, as I did indicate, can save up to 42% in energy costs just on one side through installing energy efficient lighting. So what I would like to know is whether the 94,000 capacity stadium do have its power through clean sources. The second is recycling of the trash. If it is plastic bottles that can be recycled into pavement tiles that then will be able to be used in construction of homes. And this has proven to work very effectively. It is cost effective and it is more durable than tiles that are made from concrete. If it is waste that can be recycled, like paper waste, can actually be recycled, or food waste that can actually be turned into burgers, which will then be marketed. But what needs to happen, which is really what I think is the platform, the 94,000 capacity stadium, is an opportunity to also leverage advertising during the game to showcase solutions that are not only to benefit the stadium, or to benefit the university, but also benefit the community and the entire nation, like showcasing cheaper solutions of biogas, waste to biogas, and also the innovations around that actually the private actors can pick it up to create their enterprises on that. And leveraging that, these opportunities will be a gateway that the sporting platform is actually leveraging their advertising moment to showcase practical environmental solutions that can impact beyond the stadium other people. The other aspect, which I think is if they also showcase e-mobility, e-vehicles that are actually cost-effective and environmentally friendly, most of the spectators could actually, by the time they are coming to the next match, must have purchased an electric vehicle, which is environmentally friendly. And that is also good for the health of the community as well as the game. And lastly, I think one of the most important aspect is also for the university, if this is not done, to be able to put air sensors so that the quality of air in real time in the stadium can actually be showcased. What does that mean? It will mean that the quality of air, if it is above the WHO standards during matches, and that will mean that we can then be able to make the case why the alternative solutions that are environmentally friendly are actually needed, and a lot of people will buy into it, showing the impact of the air quality in real time, as well as what can be done to reverse, will be an opportunity that can be leveraged during the games. And I think this way, it will go beyond just helping and providing and saving money for the university, but also providing opportunities for millions of people who love the game of sport to pick on these solutions.
Very well said, Professor Munang. Questions start to come in. Let me read out the first question. How can we limit negative environmental effects from the Olympics? And specifically, the process of building arenas, stadiums, how that affects the nature?
Yes, I think very good question. I think I did indicate, and I gave examples of how, for example, the Olympics in Japan, in constructing the Olympic Village, use waste from constructing the Olympic Village to beds to even the medals and to recycling electronics to then be able to make the medals. And so if those good examples that do exist across the world could actually be leveraged and made the norm, and actually use arenas like you did indicate the 94,000 capacity to showcase this during games, others will start picking it up, and even nations can start picking it up. The other aspect is policy. Most of the countries are putting in place sustainability policies that are actually taxing those who are not moving towards a sustainability pathway. As those policies continue to take inroad, sustainability in making sure that what is utilized during games, during building stadiums and building even Olympic villages must be what works with nature, not against nature. And therefore, as that continues to take inroad, there will be no alternative. Else, there will be fines that will be put in place. And countries are starting to do this.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Munang. Next question from the audience. Thank you for an agreed presentation. How do you see will the ongoing climate crisis continue to shape our world in the short term and long term?
The UN Environment Program Emissions Gap Report that came out in November 2023, which is just about 5 months ago, showed the current approaches that the world have actually been on the path for quite a very long time, and what the world is doing in terms of the policies that have been put in place and actions will, if all put together, will see the world reaching 2.9 degrees. And 2.9 degrees, with where we are today at 1.1 degrees, just with an increase of 0.1 degrees, some parts of the world are already seeing the impacts. If you take the African continent, cyclones, droughts, and floods are becoming the new norm, the new reality of communities, displacing people and plunging them into suffering. It then means the pathway in which the world is currently on now, if there are no emergency brakes applied, Other regions are warming faster than the rest of the world. And if you take the African continent, it's warming twice as fast as the rest of the world. It means we'll see Asia, we'll see Latin America, we'll see Europe. We're already seeing flooding that is displacing, and we're seeing wildfires in other parts of the world, like in North America, in Canada. This will only increase. It therefore means, to answer the question, the world is actually on an unhealthy pathway. And for the world to move away from this unhealthy pathway, solutions like those that I've mentioned through the pathway of sustainability, clean energy solutions, e-mobility, recycling, making sure that at least we take that sustainability pathway, will be addressing climate change, saving our rivers, because pollution will be turned into alternatives, and saving our nature. And that's the only pathway forward. And each and every one of us have a part to play as individual citizens to get the message out, and at the same time, also make sure that we use our spaces, whether it is social media or it is in conferences like this, to discuss solutions and not only the problem, and also play our part in reducing our carbon footprint by doing that, which reduces the ecological footprint on our nature.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Munang. Next question. What is considered to be safe air quality levels? And what are the biggest contributors to air pollution during big sport events?
Very good question. First of all, the air quality do have different parameters. There is particulate matter that comes from vehicular emissions. And the particulate matter is, you either have particulate matter 2.5, particulate matter 10, and you also have nitrous oxides, you have methane. And all of these do have different levels when they are aggregated. And that the World Health Organization have put that when they aggregated together. And these are dictated using sensors on real time. For example, if you go to IQ Air and you go to Air IQ now, in your computer or on you will see the state of air in Georgia, in Atlanta, and even at the university. So this, and it will show you the matching WHO requisite level. But what actually causes air pollution in stadiums, firstly, is the kind of cars that people drive in there. The vehicular emissions, actually particulate matter is actually what is usually very high in these stadiums. And therefore, because of that, the vehicular emissions, because of driving in, the transport that people use to come in there, that's why moving towards e-mobility, alternative, and even cycling, which is very, very important, non-motorized solutions like cycling, like carpooling, like moving towards e-mobility, electric vehicles, becomes very, very important. And this is the more reason why we need then to move towards this clean solution, because they're good for health, and at the same time, they save money, and they're good for our own environment. I think you are muted, James.
My apology. He says, would you like to take a break and drink a little bit of water? You've been talking in the past an hour. We're putting the question on you. Would you like to take, before I ask the next question, would you like to take a sip of coffee or water?
No, I'm fine. I can continue, but I can still take
You've been talking
but I'm fine.
For the past hour. Thank you. Then let me ask the next question. With the increase in multi-host nations or cities for mega sports events, is the progress that the sports events have made to reduce the environmental impact going to be negated?
Come again, please. Let me get the question again. I didn't really get it.
The question is, it's a movement at the International Olympic Committee and major sports federations that multiple cities, multiple countries start to host one mega sports events. With the progress we have made in reducing pollution, enhance environmental protection, with so many chefs in the kitchen, so many countries, so many cities, are these the procedures that is in place would be somewhat overlooked, negated?
I think I didn't really, so if I understood the question well, is that countries are hosting mega events and that have shifts in one place. Maybe I didn't really get it. I just want to get
multiple countries, multiple cities now hosting one event instead of in the past a single nation or single country, city hosts an event. So now there's so many cities, countries are involved in one event. And certainly that increases the flight, like the coming World Cup 2026. There's so many countries involved, increase the flying time, coordination of the event.
Yeah, very good question. I think it's a very important question. The reality is this. I mean, we live on the planet Earth, and we understand that transportation, taking different forms, is how we move from one place to another. And there is what is called carbon offset. For example, if you fly and you plant trees, you offset. But if you also, the stadiums that are hosting these are converting their waste into biogas or into biodiesel that replaces the dependence on fossil fuels, that saves and offset the carbon. So what needs to happen is not that multiple cities will not be able to host, is that those cities that are hosting, what are they doing to offset their carbon? Is it in making sure that their systems are run by solar power energy systems, or that even the waste they are converting to use the biogas, waste to biogas to power their systems, which then offset even the emissions that will actually come as a result of flying or moving from one place to another. And I think that kind of thinking starts to prepare the countries to put in place systems and actually practical pathways on how they will offset their carbon. And in that way, we will actually make sure that we do not increase emissions, neither do we actually drive up carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, but start to offset it. And the opportunities of offsetting is that it saves money. It saves money and it saves lives.
Well, thank you. Next question is apparently from Texas. Let me say this is right. Thank y'all for putting on this wonderful presentation. This is interesting. Here's the question. How exactly will electric vehicles solve an environmental problem between the mass strip mining for lithium and the extreme power grid strain that will inevitably cause more fossil fuel burn?
Very good question. The reality is this. Let me start from the aspect of a just transition, and which moves towards making sure that at least the carbon pathway is lowered. And his question is very, very important, because to make the batteries of electric vehicles, lithium is needed. But what needs to happen is that lithium that is needed to make these batteries, that is actually the mineral that is needed for these batteries, there needs to be a lot of research that can also find alternative minerals or alternative ways that may actually be able to power electric vehicles without necessarily having to depend on those batteries. That is for research to take forward. But because lithium is utilized, nickel, etc., to do that, what needs to happen is that the processing, the mining of that lithium needs to be done in a way that is working with nature, not against nature, and not in areas where there are already water stress. And also the adding of value to that lithium should not be done in long distances, because the carbon footprint will also increase, like taking away raw lithium from Africa and flying it out to be processed elsewhere will only increase the carbon footprint. And so value addition at the point of production, at the point of mining, will create jobs, but at the same time also ensure that those electric vehicles are manufactured in that area and then also then exported to the entire world. That will help. But more importantly, electric vehicles, as compared to motorized that use diesel, that use petrol, that produce particulate matter, nitrous oxides, and sulfur, are actually what cause air pollution. and respiratory tract infections. And therefore, moving to electric vehicles without a track record of that saves life. But how the lithium is going to be handled needs to be in such a way that value addition, instead of adding value to that lithium in offshores or in faraway places before the electric vehicles are imported back to where it was gotten, value addition and production of those electric vehicles needs to happen at the point where the lithium is done. That way, we will reduce the carbon footprint and also create opportunities. However, the future is that of e-mobility, is that of electric vehicles. Why? Because it's going to be cheaper. And at the same time, governments are putting legislations in place that will tax and actually even have penalties in years to come of those who will still be depending on fossil fuels vehicles, because that is the easiest way to be able to burn the curve on the increasing carbon dioxide and greenhouse gases.
Thank you, Dr. Munang. Wonderful answers. I think our students, audience, and my colleagues are learning really from your presentation and your answers. I have a question myself. In the U.S., sports industry it continues growing as a business. Today, its annual revenue transactions getting close to $1 trillion. It's a huge business, positions itself among the top 10 businesses in the U.S. The industry has attracted many young talents, young brains want to pursue career in study in this area. So sport management is a growing area of studies, including the graduate education. Many graduate students start to want to focus their research in this topic area. What are your suggestions, some critical issues you would offer students to pursue in not only contributing to the field conceptually, theoretically, but also potentially have professional implication, practical implications? Thank you.
Yeah, very important question. And I think, like I said earlier, knowing the benefits of environment to sports is an area that there is knowledge, but knowing how sports can actually benefit the environment is an area where there is a gap. And therefore, research actually on how competitive sports impact the environment and the benefits of what the environment can bring to sports needs to be an area of research. But more importantly, the documentation of air pollution on athletes, of air pollution on how their performance is, and even their cognitive ability and their decision making. That data is out there, but it's still sketchy. But looking at how the environmental footprint or the environmental dimensions from an impact and also solutions perspective can enrich the sporting business. I'll call it the sporting sector from a business perspective is important, because the savings, like I did say that actually 42% in energy costs, just a football club can save that. That is already an amount of money. So even though the sporting sector in the US is actually, in terms of the business portfolio, averaging 1 trillion, can go more than that if they are to leverage the environmental solutions to then be able to replace the non-environmental aspect that they've been utilizing and losing money from that. And so sports as the business, environment as a business for sports needs to be an area of study, an area of research. The enterprising opportunities from an environmental perspective within sports, for example, recycling water that can actually be used to power operations in the sporting sector, regardless of which sporting sector it is, and utilizing clean energy solutions, as I did indicate, would create more opportunities and businesses that sports and the sporting fraternity can actually engage in that are not directly even related to sport, but that are actually driving sustainability. In that way, they improve their brand, In that way, they attract more people to then be able to know that it's not just a game, it's a pathway that drives solutions for a better environment and better health.
I have a question for you, Dr. Richard Munang. One, the Kenyan government has banned or made it illegal for the use of plastics. Do you think that idea could be used worldwide?
Yes, I think the beauty is, let's applaud the Kenyan government, which banned single-use plastic in 2017. That gave birth to other countries across the world banning single-use plastics. And that also set the discussion and the pace for the entire world to come together and for the first time adopted a treaty which will be finalized by end of 2024, resulting to what is called the Global Plastic Treaty, that actually looks at plastic, not just about it being used and dumped, but being recycled, but also how it is produced, because plastic also have health effects, cancerous effects. How is it produced? And how do we make sure that it doesn't end up in our rivers, in our oceans, but it recycled within the environment in such a way that it creates opportunities and the government put in place more incentives. It therefore means Kenya set the pathway, and that gave birth to a global treaty, which will be adopted by over 192 member states by end of 2024. That will catalyze an enabling environment for opportunities and businesses to see how to move away from plastic, but at the same time also leverage the plastic they have in a way that can provide alternatives. Like I indicated, plastic can make pavement tires for buildings. Plastic actually being turned into alternatives that create jobs and create more enterprising opportunities. So to answer your question, Kenya set a good precedent that did not only saw countries picking up to ban plastic, but saw the entire world coming together to have a treaty that will help the entire world to turn plastic just from one usage to disposal, now utilizing plastic as a good in its own self, and also how it is produced and how it remains in our environment, also in a safe way.
Thank you, Dr. Munang. I have one final question for you. And given our superstar athletes, what do you think of using them to help spread the good word about curbing cutting of trees, basically empowering communities to grow trees? What do you think of that possibility? Thank you.
Very important question, Dr. Rose. The point is this: I think our superstars, superstar athletes, have been utilized before, but sometimes not necessarily on matters that drive environment from a business and socio-economic perspective. Yes, they've been utilized to sensitize people to plant trees. That's okay. They've been utilized to talk about the problem in the environmental space of pollution into our oceans, into our lakes. That's fine. But it is high time that our superstar athletes be utilized to market environmental solutions, to be able to ensure that communities can start to know that if agricultural waste is turned to fuel briquettes, a mother in a community, in a village, can move away from depending on charcoal and start using fuel briquettes, which burn longer, smoke less, and actually is good for health. That the waste that the mother throws out of the house can actually be turned to biogas that can then be able to replace her dependence on charcoal. And that this is a market opportunity for young people. And if the superstars can leverage that and start to engage young people on how they can see the opportunities in environmental challenges to turn them to environmental opportunities and show those solutions, the world will change, Africa will change, and the youth unemployment will be reduced.